So the first thing I want to do is think about with you about kind of 3 key things that you can develop in when it comes to preaching in a way that connects with the emotions. And the first of these is essentially having an emotional awareness of the congregation. And this, for some people, this comes really naturally. Essentially, this is essentially EQ, right? And some people are great at EQ. They can read people emotionally, that sort of thing. And some people can't. And then there's a whole nother thing of trying to do this with an audience. Because when you're speaking to a group of people, you've got so much going through your mind that the focus can become just you doing your bit and getting through it. And there's another level to kind of knowing your material, but then being able to adapt based on the people you're speaking to and how they're reacting to what you're doing, right? And that's something that's difficult to grow in, but important to grow in. And so I remember in the middle of COVID, when I tried to do my first teaching session over Zoom, okay? So it was a group from St. Mellitus, and I was supposed to teach them on the kind of the difficulties that come with leading a larger church, okay? And so I've got 30 faces on the screen, and I'm trying to teach. And over Zoom, especially in the early days, but even, we adapted a bit, but even still, but you just get nothing back, right? And so
I'm pictures or faces.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, exactly. But so so I'm pouring out my heart to these guys, and there's nothing back, and it's just awkward and uncomfortable and horrible. Or I remember as well, we did a preacher's evening with Simon Ponsonby online like that. And in the middle of the evening at one point, I just said to Simon, I just got his attention and just said, I said to him, you might not be able to tell, but we're enjoying this. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to affirm him in the middle of that awkwardness, right? So there's this issue of trying to improve our EQ of an audience. And so what things might come into that? One is a practical thing, just the lighting so that you can actually see people. So I've been in some places where the way the room was designed was such that you have lights hitting you, which looks great for everyone looking at you, but for you can't even see anyone, okay? In which case, then you can't. Another thing would be knowing people, and yeah.
So the E of EQ is emotional, I guess.
Yeah, emotional quotient. Like IQ, like IQ, it's EQ. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's helpful, yeah. So another thing would be knowing people in their situations. And I find this really, it's like a motivation in my preparation sometimes to think about people that will be there and what they're going through, which then can be really difficult, but really helps in regard to EQ toward an audience. Another thing would be developing a congregation so that they are able to be expressive. That takes time, but getting the atmosphere of a congregation such that people feel like they can respond or they can emote and it works, it's fine, is something that takes time to develop. And then again, of course, reading people's nonverbal, but like Melk said, sometimes you have to have some people that you just ignore. because bless them, they've been, I had a youth leader once who I almost asked to stop being a youth leader. And then I realized, I came to find that he is one of the best youth leaders, and he was with me the entire time I was running that youth ministry for 9 years. And I have so much respect for this guy. And the reason why he was falling asleep in the middle of stuff was because in the week he'd be in somewhere far off around the world, working crazy hours. He'd fly back and he'd always be back on a Sunday morning to serve the youth, right? And when I learned his character and his resolve and where in that moment anyone else would be saying, I can't make it today. He was always there, but sometimes he was falling asleep. Right? Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't know what people are going through. So sometimes there are people that you just have to kind of go, that person doesn't count. You know what I mean? But if you're not getting any reaction from people, then there's probably something that not connecting well. You're not connecting well with the people. And so that's important to develop. And so that's developing EQ, or emotional awareness of a congregation. Second thing that we can develop in, and this is somewhat profound. This is going back to Jonathan Edwards, who's been considered by many people to be the greatest philosopher in America's history, but he was very much a theologian, really. And it comes from the Great Awakening. Back in the Great Awakening, Benjamin Franklin was basically, George Whitefield was this amazing preacher that had a powerful response to things that he did. And Benjamin Franklin is supposedly said that George Whitefield's gift was so strong that he could reduce masses of crowds to tears simply by saying the word Mesopotamia. Don't know how that works, but there you go. Yeah. And so Jonathan Edwards lived and wrote during the Great Awakening, and his book, he has a book called Religious Affections that encourages a proper emotional response while also guarding against error. So very much his book addresses a lot of what we're thinking about tonight. And something that he really puts forward there is the importance of the affections. Now, the affections are different than the emotions. The affections have to do with what you desire. And your emotions quite often are connected to that. And so what he was going, the emotions are a byproduct. What we need to do is we need to address the heart. In other words, what does the heart desire? Does the heart desire money? Does the heart desire to please God? What does the heart desire? And have the proper emotional connection to that. But if we can address the affections, we go kind of deeper underneath all of this, okay? E.G. White says it this way: the object of preaching is not alone to convey information, not merely to convince the intellect. The preaching of the word should appeal to the intellect and should impart knowledge, but it should do more than this. The words of the minister should reach the hearts of the hearers.
Amen.
Yeah, come on.
Preach it.
Okay, and then a third thing I just want to kind of get you thinking about right now that can be helpful for this is what I would call, and this comes into your preparation, what I would call emotional exegesis, okay? Now, we described exegesis earlier in one of the sessions as essentially you're studying the text to get the ideas from the text, right? Exegesis instead of eisegesis, where we're trying to put our ideas onto the text, okay? Emotional exegesis. And so when you're studying the text then, and I put this in your notes because I think these questions are very helpful, what emotions did this text evoke in its author? What emotion did the author intend to evoke in the audience? How do I help the hearers to connect with those emotions? How much do I want them to feel the same way? And how do I keep this appropriate to the text? And so often I would say that we ask in our preparation and in our preaching the question, what am I doing to these people, right? It's a really helpful thing to think about. Another similar question might be, what do I want them to feel? So in other words, if you're studying a Bible text and you think about the emotions that people are feeling within that text, how can the people that are listening to the sermon feel those same emotions? Okay? And if you can convey the story, you can illustrate, whatever that is that brings them to that same place, they're probably going to connect with that passage on a deeper level. Now, again, it shouldn't be manipulation. It should be held in check. We shouldn't go so far as to we don't want them to feel like Jesus on the cross. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, we can get them to understand what it might have been like. What might it have been like to be standing at the foot of the cross, like John with Mary, right? And to connect emotionally with what that story is can really enhance your preaching. And so there's something here of emotional exegesis. So what I want to give you just for a few minutes right now, just in your groups, real quick, pick a passage and just go, if you were doing emotional exegesis, what might that look like? How can people feel the emotions that are in the passage? Do you have any ideas? Again, we'll have to do this real quick. You can pick just about any passage. And again, what emotions are intended to be conveyed by the writer? What emotions are people within the story perhaps feeling? How would you connect that to people? How would you help them to feel the same thing? That's the sort of things that you're wrestling with. Go for it.